Hey everybody. So today we are going to be talking about the lunar eclipse in Taurus that will take place on October 28th of 2023 at 3:23 p.m. Central Time. Depending on where you are in the world, you will need to adjust to your time zone, but knowing that it's 3:23 p.m. Central Time gives you a place to start to go forward in time, backward in time, whatever. Or if you're in Central Time, 3:23 p.m. Um, I wanted to do something on this one because, well, not only because I did something on the solar eclipse in Libra a couple weeks ago, but also because back in May I talked about the lunar eclipse in Scorpio that took place. Did a video on that about 6 months ago, and I mentioned in that video that the eclipses along the Taurus Scorpio axis with the south node in Scorpio, north node in Taurus, and Scorpio energy dealing so much with purging, releasing, transforming, all of these kinds of things, that these next, the 6 months from when that lunar eclipse in Scorpio took place to the lunar eclipse in Taurus that'll take place in a few days, there's like a massive push, an even stronger push for all of this to transpire. And I mean, this push, though, to be fair, this push has been there the entire time this eclipse series has gone on, right? Like from this eclipse series started on November 19th of 2021. So there has been this push towards release, purging, transformation, other kinds of, Scorpio things. And moving on, if you will, moving towards security, stability, comfort, things like that with the north node in Taurus, which has really been the goal. Now this eclipse is a little different. It's a hybrid. I'll show you why. Let me. Okay, so while we have the transiting sun at 5 degrees Scorpio, we've got the transiting moon at 5 degrees Taurus. We also have the lunar nodes have shifted into Libra and Aries. The transiting south node is at 24 degrees Libra. The transiting north node is at 24 degrees Aries. This brings in a flavor of the self with the north node in Aries versus the concept of the other, which is very Libra, right? Or the self and relationships. And with this involved, I do feel like not universally, not for everybody, but relationships are going to play into this eclipse. This could be the transformation of relationships. This could be the transformation of relationships that actually benefit the self, and that ultimately end up making one more comfortable, stable, secure, feel valued, these kinds of things, to actually purging relationships, releasing relationships, these kinds of things. Now with Chiron, transit Chiron in Aries, loosely conjunct that north node, I do feel like there is some pain with this, but there's also a lot of healing with it too. I actually think the pain comes into play more when the transformation doesn't happen, when the purging and releasing doesn't happen, when these things, when we're not releasing person, places, things, situations, etc., that no longer serve us. That's when the pain comes more into play. It's like a self-inflicted pain that might feel like it's inflicted by somebody else. And, in some cases, it very well could be inflicted by somebody else. I don't want to dismiss anybody's experience. But it does feel like here, generally speaking, if there is pain here, it is self-inflicted, and it's because this transformation is not being leaned into. This purging and releasing is not being leaned into. Ultimately making it harder and more painful for the self. So that does need to be, that kind of a thing does need to be watched. Because, the south node can be where we are comfortable, where we are familiar. And, Scorpio energy, where the sun is, wants to hold on to things for dear fucking life. Now, it knows that it needs to let things go. Scorpio energy does know this on an instinctual level, on an evolutionary level. It knows this, but it can have a very hard time doing it, doing this. So I would ask yourself, the things that you're holding on to, right? Or the things that you feel inclined to hold on to, are they actually hurting you? Are they causing you more pain than necessary? And I also bring this up, Venus, which is the ruler of the South Node. It's also the ruler of the moon here. But it's a planet. I'm focusing on the South Node at the moment. It's also, Virgo energy. Sometimes it can kind of be a glutton for punishment. Because and I say that, I kind of laugh when I say that, but Virgo energy can sometimes feel overly guilty, overly shameful for shit it shouldn't feel shameful for. And I would make sure that's not happening here, that it's not like almost like being a glutton for punishment, in terms of not releasing, purging, transforming, perhaps what should be, especially with Venus quincunx Chiron. This might not be seen. It might not be seen just how you are kind of punishing yourself or hurting yourself. With these, by holding on to these person, places, things, situations that you might be inclined to hold on to. Now, because this is a partial eclipse, it may not be for everybody. Here, I'm going to go and stop sharing this for a second. It may not be for everybody that a person, place, thing, situation, etc., has to be completely purged, right? Because we were talking about a partial eclipse. Now, I will leave that up to you, and what it really does depend on you personally, your personal situation, what the eclipse is doing in your chart, right? To kind of know which way you should go with this. But it could be that, maybe some person, place, thing, or whatever situation doesn't have to be completely purged, but it does have to be transformed. This is kind of the big thing here. Like, you can't just sit there and be like, or I don't think you can just sit there and be like, oh, I don't need to purge that thing, or I don't need to purge that situation, or I don't need to release that person, and things can stay exactly the same. You fucking do that, shit's gonna be so fucking chaotic. Seriously, if you do that, shit it's gonna feel so much harder, because that Pluto squaring the nodal axis. Let me see. I don't think I brought that up yet. Pluto squaring the nodal axis. I mean, it's like it wants that transformation. It wants that purging. It wants that release. It wants that. So if you try to sit there and say, oh, I don't need to purge that person, place, situation, thing, whatever, but you actually do need to purge it, or at the very least, it needs to transform. It's just everything's gonna feel a lot more stressful than it needs to. So it could be that something needs to be completely purged or released, or it could also be that it just needs to be transformed, right? Into something that works better for you personally, into something that, makes you feel more stable, secure, comfortable, whatever. I do think things like this have probably been sort of illuminated to people over this entire eclipse series, but especially the past 6 months with the last thrust or push towards the last eclipse along the Taurus Scorpio axis. Another thing to mention here, there is a real feeling of coming undone. Now, I mentioned before that I'll wake up sometimes with songs in my head. This has been going on for 2 years, over 2 years. And for the past 6 months, every so often I will wake up with the song Come Undone by Duran Duran in my head. There. It's just there when I wake up. It's just there. Over the past week or so, it's been there much more often. Like damn near every fucking morning. Maybe not every single morning, but pretty close. Quite a few. And I'm thinking to myself, this has to do with the eclipse. This is for the eclipse. That's why this is there, because there are, like, in my own life, there are ways that things have come undone, which is not a bad thing in the context of how I, things that have happened. Not a bad thing at all. So I don't, when I say this eclipse feels very coming undone, I don't mean it in a scary or an ominous way. I don't mean it in a negative way. I will say this is also coming from a 12th house sun who has come undone many times in her life and brought herself back together, or frankenfucked herself, however you want to think about it. but I don't think that coming undone is always a bad thing. In fact, I think sometimes it has to happen for things to come back together. Sometimes things have to come undone. Sometimes you have to come undone, and then you can come back together in a, say, more stable way, more secure way, more comfortable way in the long run with that moon in Taurus. Let me show you, I'll show you another reason why it's not just songs in my head that make me think about that, but also, okay, so Saturn is in Pisces. Saturn's been in Pisces for, a lot of this year. But it is, it's trine the sun, the transiting sun, and trine the south node. It's also sextile the moon and sextile the north node. Now the trines can get kind of lazy. They can also be like wonderful, fabulous, easy, but they can get lazy. Whereas the sextiles, that doesn't tend to happen with them. There's less of a laziness with them. So it makes me think here, like, if there are things that you feel like are coming undone in your life, coming unraveled, Saturn is like structure, right? And Pisces dissolves. So structure dissolving is one way that you could go with Saturn and Pisces. There are many other ways, but that is one way. And I think of dissolving as kind of being like coming undone or unraveling as well. If there are things that still feel like they need a push to finish being dissolved or coming undone, don't get lazy with this. I do think there needs to be a conscious push to do it. And I say that because of the sextile with Saturn to the moon and to the south node here, or sorry, the north node here. I do think there does need to be a conscious push to kind of keep the ball rolling. Like, that sounds confusing because I think the ball is kept rolling no matter what. but I do think there has to be some conscious effort put into it. So I would keep an eye on that. But again, it's not a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. Even if it's a difficult thing and a challenging thing at the time, right now, like during the energy of this eclipse, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. It just might be a challenging thing now. But I don't think that it's bad. And I don't mean it in like a bad way. Another thing, but there might be less of an inclination to do this. I also think of like Neptune, right? I mentioned Pisces, energy being like coming undone or unraveling or dissolving. Neptune can kind of want to express the same things. It can. And it is retrograde, and it is quincunx the south node. Now, Neptune retrograde wants to break through illusions, delusions, clouding, all those kinds of things. Wants to break through these things. And it does make me think here with the quincunx to the south node that it might be more comfortable to not do that, to not do the unraveling, coming undone, dissolving. It might be more comfortable to not do that. Meaning this need to break through illusions, delusions, clouding, all of that may not be seen as easily because, with the quincunx aspect, you've got things in the chart that aren't being seen or felt together in tandem easily. So do make sure that like you are trying to breakthrough, illusions, delusions, clouding, all that sort of Neptunian shit that tends to be more challenging. So that you can, you know, move forward. That is important, I think, here, and not just staying where something is comfortable, choosing not to break through those things that might be illusions or delusions, that kind of stuff. I do think that should be watched. Because I think if it is leaned into breaking through those illusions, delusions, that kind of stuff, there can be a lot of really beautiful coming undone that happens. That would be a good thing, you know. I think overall it is a good thing. Even if it doesn't feel like a good thing at the time, right? Even if it doesn't feel like an easy thing at the time. So do make sure that's not getting missed. With the ruler of the North Node being Mars and Scorpio. And actually, you know, even though Mars is conjunct to the sun, I do think that it's personally too wide to be conjunct to the South Node. I like this. I like that it's not. I do like that it's not, because I feel like it would be made more difficult if it was, if I did consider it conjunct. So I do like that it's not. But I think it's really important that, like, there is, like, you know, with the stuff that, you know, moving towards, you know, with the things that you might release or purge or transform to bring you more security, stability, comfort, value, all of those things, and independence, and drive and freedom, and, you know, things having to do with the self, with that North Node in Aries. There also needs to be, like, passion behind it. I think it needs to be something that you feel passionate about, that you feel deeply about. I think that is important. I think there is an element of passion here that is an important thing to consider here. And I mean, what, you know, the stuff with the self, really, there should be passion with it. I don't think there always is, but there should be. Because, you know, one should be passionate about things having to do with themselves. I think so anyway. Again, opinions are like assholes, but I don't. Yeah, I think that that's an important piece here. That any releases that happen, purgings that happen, transformations that happen, there is a passion with them. There's a passion with them, a depth to them, a meaning. I think that's an important piece as well. Now, I also want to mention that Shapley attractor is conjunct to the sun, and the moon is conjunct to the dipole repeller. The sun conjunct Shapley makes me think that there is quite a pull with this eclipse. Means it feels very powerful to me. It feels very, very powerful to me. It feels like it adds some oomph. The moon conjunct the dipole repeller feels a little like falling into a void. And I also want to say, and this isn't universal for everybody, it does depend on your chart, but it does kind of feel like, you know, the dipole repeller is a big giant cosmic void. And this is a transiting thing, so it's not going to last long. But if on the day of the eclipse, you feel a little like you've fallen into a void, I would roll with it. It's not going to last. But I would roll with it. Also, there's something here about, and I'm not going to say this correctly because I don't want to say take your emotions fully out of it. That's not accurate. But since the moon is exalted in Taurus, and I do look at like exaltation, fall, that kind of shit, domicile, home, with like event charts or things like this, I do take them into consideration. Because the moon is exalted in Taurus, there can be an exaggeration to it. meaning the emotional stuff could feel even more like heightened. It's possible, especially depending on what's going on in your chart. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you happen to instead feel like you're falling into a void, into a cosmic void for a little bit, it will pass. And I don't think that's the worst thing. I don't think it's the worst thing to take emotions out of this just a little bit. Right. I don't think that it is, because ultimately, that moon in Taurus, right? Emotional stability, security, comfort, these kinds of things are important to a moon in Taurus in general. And because there are so many like things going on here that do feel a little bit more tumultuous or, powerful, I don't think it's a terrible idea if emotions kind of are taken out of this one just a little bit. I feel like it might actually make it easier. I feel like it might. That doesn't mean you don't do what you're passionate. It's not that you don't take a passionate approach, right? Because that Mars is in Scorpio. I do think the passion here is important, but I would try to. I do feel like leaving emotions out of this as much as possible probably is a good idea. It probably helps it probably helps the transformation. It probably helps the purging and releasing. It probably helps any like power control shit. Yeah. Just my opinion. If you would like me to read for you, I will put the link below where you can get a reading from me. This could be an eclipse reading or whatever. Just, I do readings. So, so if you are interested, I will put the link below where you can find me. And, yeah, I guess I'm going to head off, but I'll see y'all later.